long, unending night of human cruelty, there are moments when evil becomes so casual that it shocks heaven itself. One such moment was the massacre aboard the British slave ship Zong in the year 1781. Hundreds of innocent men, women, and children were thrown alive into the Atlantic Ocean, not by pirates, not by enemies, but by those who called themselves civilized traders. Their lives were weighed not against morality, but insurance money. And as their bodies vanished beneath the waves, the heavens must have heard echoes of another ancient cry, the cry of the Israelites in Egypt, when Pharaoh's chains grew heavier. That same God who heard the cries from the Nile surely heard the cries from the Atlantic. This is not just a story of a ship, it is a story of humanity's fall and the enduring call for justice. This is the Zong Massacre. It began like many voyages in that cruel trade. In August 1781, a British ship named Zong sailed from the Gold Coast, what we now call Ghana, bound for Jamaica. On board were over 440 enslaved Africans, chained below decks, packed shoulder to shoulder. The air was suffocating. Disease spread like fire, and the smell of sweat, blood, and death filled the hold. The captain, Luke Collingwood, was a former surgeon, but his decisions would soon defy every oath to preserve life. Weeks into the journey, sickness broke out. Dozens died. Food and water supplies dwindled. The crew panicked. And then, they began to whisper of a plan that would turn human beings into numbers on a ledger. On November 29th, 1781, the crew gathered on deck. Their captain announced that water was running out. He feared that if all the enslaved people lived, none would survive. But there was another motive, darker still. Under British maritime law, if cargo was lost at sea due to necessity, insurance would pay for it. But if slaves died of disease, there would be no compensation. The decision was made. To save profits, they would throw the dying overboard. That night, 54 women and children were dragged from below deck, screaming, crying, thrown into the black Atlantic one by one. Their bodies vanished into the sea, swallowed by waves, witnessed only by the stars above. 2 days later, another 42 men were thrown overboard. And when the heavens opened and rain began to fall, refilling their water barrels, the killings did not stop. The crew continued, casting another 36 human souls into the sea. In total, more than 130 Africans were murdered, in cold calculation. They said it was necessary. They said it was lawful. But heaven calls it murder. When the Zong finally reached Jamaica, the owners filed an insurance claim for lost cargo. Imagine the coldness of that line. Claim for lost cargo. 133 slaves. The insurers refused to pay, so the case went to court. Gregson versus Gilbert in 1783. But here's the horror. The court did not debate murder. It debated money. The question was not, who killed them? It was, should the insurance pay for the ones thrown overboard? In the first hearing, the ship owners won. The judge compared the human beings to horses thrown overboard to save a ship. But when new evidence arose, that it had rained and the water shortage was false, Chief Justice Mansfield ordered a retrial. Still, no one was ever punished. The retrial never happened. The law never called it murder. A world that valued cargo over compassion, profit over people, law over life. Yet even in that darkness, a spark ignited. A man named Olaudah Equiano, a freed African who had once been enslaved himself, told the story to Granville Sharp, an English abolitionist. Together, they brought the Zong Massacre to public light. Newspapers printed the horror. Churches began to preach about the sin of slavery. And a movement, the abolition of the slave trade, began to take fire. But for the victims of the Zong, justice never came. The Bible tells of another people, oppressed and broken, crying out from their suffering. Exodus 2:23 says, "And their cry rose up unto God because of their bondage." Those were the Israelites in Egypt, their bodies beaten, their sons drowned in the Nile. And in that suffering, God heard their cry. When Moses stood before Pharaoh and said, "Thus says the Lord, let my people go," it was not a political demand, it was a divine command. Now imagine, in 1781, as waves swallowed 130 lives, another cry rose up. Across the seas, across centuries. If God heard the Israelites groan under Pharaoh, did he not also hear the cry of those cast into the Atlantic? Both cries, ancient and modern, speak the same truth, that no human being is property. No life can be weighed by coin. Just as Moses faced Pharaoh, so too must every generation confront its own pharaohs. The systems, the laws, the excuses that turn people into things. The Zong trial reminds us, evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it writes contracts. Sometimes it hides behind words like necessity, insurance, profit. But God's voice still thundered then, as it does now. Let my people go. The Zong teaches us 5 enduring lessons. Every life bears the image of God. Once we forget that, even law becomes cruelty. It wasn't one man who killed 130 Africans. It was a system built on greed and law, blessed by silence. In Exodus 12:26, God commands his people to remember the night of deliverance. We too must remember the night of the Zong, not to despair, but to keep humanity awake. His cry, "Let my people go," is still a call today, against human trafficking, racial injustice, and oppression of every kind. The Zong's victims had no grave, no names, no trial. But if we remember, if we act, their memory becomes their justice. Somewhere beneath the Atlantic lies a graveyard without tombstones, a resting place for souls the world once called cargo. Their story asks us one question: will we remain silent, or will we speak as Moses did? For the Lord heard the groaning of his people. Exodus 6:5, if he heard then, he hears now. Let their memory awaken your conscience. Let their story call forth your courage. And let the cry of the Zong echo through time, until justice rolls down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream.